in this moment, we find that they are actually delivering the word when he doesn't even know. Isn't it something that the Messiah, something that they have been looking for and they have been believing for and asking God for, was happening in their midst, and yet they could have let it pass them by. So many not even knowing it. Matter of fact, even those in authority had to be told by people from the east of what was going on. And as they arrive, we find when it comes from the east, and the reason why it's kind of not, I don't know how to describe it, but crazy isn't the right word, but how crazy is it that we find that it goes back even into the times of Daniel? And you can find that actually the word used in here, the wise men, it's actually from the Greek word magi. You've heard them described as magi. That's where we get our word magician from. And so, yes, wise men, yes, and in those days and in the early days, chemistry and alchemy was a blurred line. It was this lines that were blurred together from chemistry to sorcery and these type of things. And when we find Daniel, who was captured and taken away from his land into Babylon, we find him underneath a pagan king, a king that's not righteous at all, matter of fact. And yet we find this is the king God speaks to. This is the king God speaks to in a dream. And he could tell it was something that he couldn't get away from. It was driving him to the point he must know what it means. He knew this is not just a dream. I've got to know what this means. And when he called his magicians, his sorcerers, and his wise men together, you know who was numbered in that? You had Daniel, you had his 3 friends, and they all had been placed together in this group. And their life was on the line, and he said, matter of fact, if you don't tell me the interpretation, just like great people in authority love to do, I'm going to kill you, great authority. And so Daniel and his friends begin to seek God. Their life was on the line, and God begins to come to Daniel in a dream. And he comes forth and says, King, I've got the interpretation for you. So blessed and so new, that was so accurate. I'll tell you what your dream was, and I'll tell you what it means. And the king began to repent, and the king falls and begins to lift up Daniel and Daniel's God in this pagan kingdom. And isn't that wild that here positioned at this place where this pagan king has a word from the Lord, and there's got to be somebody with an answer. And lo and behold, somebody who was taken captive from their home, brought into captivity, finds himself positioned at the right place at the right time. Now, if you were to ask Daniel, it might not seem like you was right in the middle of God's destiny for his life. Who wants to be dragged away from your homeland, away from your family? You're imprisoned, and then you're placed, and then here you are, you're a servant of the Most High God, and they group you into sorcerers and magicians. How do you like that? Doesn't seem like things are going right just the way you thought, they would go. But now he actually, because he interprets the dream, he puts Daniel as chief of the wise men. Now those that were dabbling in astrology and stars and sorcery, now we find Daniel's made chief of them. This is why the theologians believe. Here come the wise men from the east, the same word of magi, the same words used in that time, that because of Daniel's influence and because of what he left of his inheritance and his legacy behind, he left a mark upon the whole group of people that he was over, to the point to where hundreds of years later they said, here is the prophecy Daniel was speaking about. And they had the sense enough to know that they could see a star, and they could see that there was something going on in the heavens that were aligning to the place of what this Daniel told us about by the prophecy of the God of Daniel, that something was happening right now, that there was a Messiah, a king that was going to be raised up, and the government was going to be upon his shoulder. They start going, we must go and let's worship this king. I think this is so cool. So now we find them, and sometimes we don't really, it's hard to understand, but at this point in time, from the area they're coming from was at war with Rome. So not only are they just going to go, hey, let's go do this sweet thing where we go to church and we just worship. Now let's put it into this effect. Hey, let's take gold and let's go behind enemy lines carrying in our entourage these gifts. That doesn't seem normal, does it? But they knew they must go and they must worship the king. And they took their gifts and they go behind enemy lines and they come to this place where Herod's at. And Herod doesn't even know what's going on. Most of the people still didn't really even know what was going on. It took the host of heaven and the angels to take shepherds and turn them into prophets as they're prophesying, God is on the move tonight. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. We're out there watching our sheep and all of a sudden, and I love this. It's in Luke chapter 2, when the shepherds are watching their flock, and you hear, I love it, I just got to read this. Verse 13, and suddenly there was with them an angel. Now listen to this, not just angel or angels, but a multitude of heavenly hosts praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace and goodwill towards men. Angels and the hosts of heaven. This is just my opinion after reading some of the scripture. But I believe heaven is so excited about what God is doing on the earth that every once in a while they break forth into the realm to be able to see. And they're sitting there singing praises about God's goodwill towards man. Angels and hosts of heaven. And more than what we understand, I think the hosts of heaven, are a part of our life more than what we realize and are watching. And there they are with the angels telling these shepherds, heaven is on the move tonight. Watch out, don't miss it. Because tonight, the Son of God is being born right here in your town. Not even this in Bethlehem, because this was a word that was prophesied as well. And by the way, these words go all the way back to a prophet that turned false by Balaam in Numbers chapter 24. Balaam, the stupid, crazy prophet that was just nuts, actually had enough still where he was prophesying about the star coming out of Jacob. And then you go from all the way back there to this crazy prophet, to an Isaiah, to a Micah, and all these prophets are speaking about, and oh, by the way, it's coming out of this town of Bethlehem. And that's all fine, and we know that just from the Christmas cards, the songs that we sing, but Mary and Joseph weren't in Bethlehem. Where were Mary and Joseph living? Nazareth. Mary and Joseph, right, Jesus of Nazareth. That was their home. That's where Joseph had his carpentry business. But that's not where God prophesied by his word where the Son of God was going to be born. So how are you going to get a woman in her third trimester who's getting ready to deliver to travel over 90 miles? If I'm speaking to any man, you're not going to make a woman do anything that's in her third trimester, especially something like that, unless they have to. Now, how are you going to get a Joseph and a Mary to the right place at the right time, because she's getting ready to deliver, but they're over 90 miles away, and something's not seeming right, except for the fact that Caesar Augustus makes a decree that a census must be taken, and you must return to your place, your birthplace, or your lineage for the census. And here we find yet not a righteous man, but what God's speaking. If you're not careful, you wouldn't even realize God can even use Caesar. Oh, that ought to touch somebody right there. The hand of the king the heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord. And we find, because, it'd be nice because there was actually two Bethlehems, but this is the Bethlehem of Judea. The other Bethlehem was 6 miles from Nazareth. How many of those would say, oh, God, could you throw me a bone here? 6 miles would be a lot better than over 90. Do you see that I'm pregnant here? You said that I was going to be blessed and highly favored. Come on now. But they traveled over 90-mile trip journey to get to this place because there was a word that was spoken by a prophet delivering the word of the Lord. And watch as you see, dancing behind the scene of our everyday life, you'll see the hand of God who moves heaven and earth to make sure his word is true. In this Christmas moment, I realize, I take hope in this, that what God says, he means. And regardless of what I'm going through. Now, Mary, I know she heard blessed and highly favored, but I got to believe that, it didn't say that she had a supernatural injection of, not Pitocin, that's the wrong, epidural, there we go. I should know this by now. She didn't get a heavenly epidural at this moment that it says, at least in the King James Version, but it had to be this painful thing, and with every bump in the road, I don't think she's going, I'm blessed and highly favored. But sometimes in our journey in life, there's things we don't understand that happen to us. God, wouldn't it just be easier for 6 miles? God, could you have at least, betrothed me to a man that owned some camels and I could have rode in style? Or, God, there's a lot of questions of things that we don't understand that happen to us in our life. And when we get to these moments when we're in pain and it doesn't make sense, and God, this isn't what I was expecting when you prophesied a word to me, and God, when you spoke to me in dreams and had angels ministering to me, this wasn't what I thought I was signing up for. But yet in her heart says, when she asked, how can this be? And the angel said, the Spirit of God is going to just hover over. Yeah, it makes no sense at all. But she said, be it unto me according to your will. In other words, maybe I still don't understand even though I asked the question. Have you guys ever had that in your life? Have you ever had a question that when you asked God, you still didn't understand? But yet she had this heart that said, be it unto me according to your will. I don't understand how it's going to happen, but God, if you want to use somebody in this generation and you're asking me, sign me up. If you can use anybody, Lord, use me. And through the pain and through the questions and not knowing or understanding, you still have to have the condition of the heart like Mary that says, Lord, according to your will, God, whatever it is, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense, and it's not easy. But God, I'll take the next step. I will do the next thing you're asking me to do. And see, in her mind, she isn't thinking God's asking her to do it. If you would listen, I bet you there were some complaints about the Caesar who ordered this at the wrong time. And here we are complaining about things in our life that's not fair and doesn't make sense, and it's not easy for us, but yet it wasn't Caesar's reason for making the decree. And if we get beyond the pain and say, God, even though I don't understand, there's going to be something about this. Even though I don't feel blessed and highly favored, be it unto me according to your will, I'm going to take one step in front of the other. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other, beyond the circumstances that I don't get and I don't understand. And I'm going to follow you, God, even if I feel like I have a Caesar telling me what to do. And we find that they get to Bethlehem, but of course you should get to Bethlehem of Judea, because these shepherds weren't just these shepherds watching their flock by night on a silent night. These were Levitical shepherds. These weren't just ordinary shepherds. Bethlehem means house of bread. And where should there be but the bread of life coming forth from the house of bread? And where should they come from? Bethlehem was a place where they raised the Levitical sheep. That means they were being raised to be sacrificed. Special lambs for the sacrificing in the temple. They had to be lambs that were without spot or blemish. These shepherds that came to him in the midst of this manger scene weren't just ordinary shepherds. They were Levitical shepherds. And they were coming because Bethlehem was the place where lambs were raised for the sacrifice. It's really amazing how things happening and we don't even realize it. And if you knew it in Bethlehem that night, they didn't realize what was going on because they didn't even make room for him. And if you're not careful in our life, when we're not sensitive to what God's doing, we don't even make room for him. And if you're not careful, heaven and earth is singing and moving, and it's right around you, and you don't even realize it. How can that be? But the beauty of it, when there's moments that I have like that on a regular basis, because you can ask my wife, I don't take hints very well. And sometimes I need angels singing to me, flagging me down, and saying, hey, you, God's moving, why don't you get there? Okay. You find that even when you don't know, that God brings us those signs and delivers us the message of what he's doing. And now we find out, as the worship team comes, throughout Old Testament and New Testament, this message is given. But in Matthew 24:35, he said, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. And if he has to move heaven and earth to accomplish his word, guess what? He's going to move heaven and earth. Stars moving and realigning. People setting decrees and taking trips that they don't want to take that are uncomfortable. But why? Because there's a destiny moment of a word given that you don't even understand, that son is going to be raised for a sacrifice once and for all. And there is going to be a blessings and highly favored, not like you think. And maybe it's not going to be like you think. And there's times when it is like you think. But how blessed do you think Mary was when she entered into eternity? Wow. Could you imagine that? I know a lot of evangelicals that really down the Catholics, but she was blessed and highly favored. It'd be pretty cool to get up there and you're like the mother of Jesus, you know? It's pretty amazing. And the star that astonished these wise men still astonishes us today, right? This is the star that Jesus spoke of himself, even in Revelations 22 and 16. When he says he set his angel to testify of these things in the churches, he says, I am the root and the offspring of David. I am the bright and the morning star. I am. Jesus came because it wasn't just God for us, but God with us. This was God's original intent and his plan. And God says, not even just for your name's sake, but for my name's sake, I'll take matters into my own hands, and I'll cover every sin. I'll be able to provide a way for every forgiveness, for every gap that's been made by sin. And I want you to know I'll move heaven and earth to get to you, to let you know how much I love you, to let you know how much you mean to me. This is the God that we serve. This is the God that says, I'm not like the rest. My word does mean something. I don't lie. My word is true. What I spoke in the book of Genesis chapter 1 still resides in Luke chapter 2. Or how about John 1? Right? Everybody standing. He said in John 1, it gives a good description of Jesus. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same in the beginning with God, with all things were made by him. Without him was nothing made that was made. And in him was the life, and the light was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness. Even though he's being born in this manger, don't think it's not strange. My word will not fade away. He was there in the beginning of creation. Micah said, if you'll remember at the end of that prophecy, he said to everlasting. It's eternal. It's eternal to everlasting. And he came and answered to this God with us. Emmanuel. He shall be called Emmanuel, meaning God with us. That's how Jesus came. And it's just as he came as the way that he left. He says, lo, I'll be with you, and to the ends of the earth. I will never leave you nor forsake you. He is the Jesus that was with us at the beginning of this earth, and when he left the same way. And guess what? That's the way he's coming back again, with fire in his eyes, as King of Kings. Not just King of the Jews, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It's for this, oh God, we thank you. As we stand here thousands of years later, celebrating the moment you broke out of eternity and into time. We celebrate the moment that the definition of the word that you prophesied was spoken through the prophets of old were manifested and unfolded before our very eyes. God, I thank you on our journey to destiny. Of the things, oh God, that aren't comfortable, that didn't seem what we signed up for, that didn't quite make sense. We stand in the middle of our journey saying, God, I don't understand, but I'll take one foot and put it in front of the other. I'll take one step and put it in front of the other. And I don't understand it, God, but here I am. Here I am. God, I thank you. Through every scar, through every tear, that it be fuel for the fire. Fuel for the fire for your people here this morning as we celebrate the God who will never leave us nor forsake us, but the God who is with us. His name is Emmanuel, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, born in Bethlehem because God said so. If you're here this morning and you need to make a fresh surrender of your heart to Jesus, whether it's the first time or a rededication, maybe you need prayer for healing in your body, healing in your mind, healing in your soul. Whatever the case, whatever the prayer request may be, as the pastors and ministry team make their way up here to this altar, we open up this altar here as we worship with this song, as we come to worship. Just invite you, for those that have any prayer requests, to step out of your seat, make your way up here this morning. We know that you're here at this time for a reason. Heaven and earth has been moved for this moment. You've been positioned, stationed right here. There's the glory of God, the light, the stars shining right over your situation. So here this morning, just step out of your seat. Come on up here for prayer as we worship.